We welcome you back to the Patrick Netherton Show here in Shreveport on a beautiful day. Rogers and I did a little patio dining. We'll talk about that coming up. We'll also discuss a little bit about the NFL schedule release show coming up tonight. And is it overkill? Hint, yes, it is. But first, it's time to talk about, I'd argue it's my favorite subject, even over sports, and that is barbecue. And we're joined now by one of the best to do it in the entire state of Texas. His restaurant, Bodacious BBQ on Mobberly and Longview, ranked number 4 in the state of Texas in the most recent Texas Monthly Top 50. He is Bryan Bingham, the pitmaster over at Bodacious. Bryan, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm good. Hey, so before we kind of get into everything, you're in an interesting situation because you're in a business where you still have to, you still want to be open, you still want to be serving, you're having to sort of change how you approach things. But do you go in? Is it maybe a little bit more nerve-wracking because you might rather just be sitting at home and sheltering in place as opposed to going out and doing this? Like, what's the adjustment, at least emotionally, when you know you're wanting to go out and serve people and you're still going to be out in the public that much?
For me, there really was no other question, whether I was going to close the restaurant down or be open. It was a little, we just didn't really know what to expect. We're a little nervous with everything going on, but we've tried as hard as we can to keep everything clean and keep our interaction with people down to a minimum. But as far as, would I rather be at home? No. Whatever I have to do, I want to cook barbecue. There's literally nothing else I'd rather do in the world. So, no matter whatever we have to do, I'm going to pivot and I'm going to make that happen so I can keep doing what I love to do.
All right. So let's go back to how all this came about and how you got in, to the Bodacious family, because you're a guy that has, some different experiences. You kind of came at this from a different direction. Walk us through kind of how you got into barbecue, when you knew this was something you wanted to do and had a passion for, and how you got into the Bodacious family.
Yeah, so, cooking, growing up, I literally had no experience. My parents cooked, my dad would grill and stuff, and never really any barbecue, just grilling on the charcoal. And, I don't know. One day, my wife has a real passion for cooking, mm-hmm. and she would always constantly have the Food Network on because she's really into that. And I don't know. One day, I just was watching something, and I couldn't even tell you what it was we were watching, but I just thought to myself, I want to try and cook something. And so I just, on a whim, went to the store and bought a bunch of stuff. We made some fish tacos. And after that, I found this crazy passion, and I just became obsessed with it. And, after that, when we moved into our house, I got a charcoal grill, which I started doing kind of offset cooking in that. And then I went to culinary school. And from culinary school, while I was there, I was going to school full time, and I was working at Starbucks, actually. And, my first year of school, I applied to literally every single restaurant in Longview and got a job at Golden Corral, worked there for a few months, like they always say, fake it till you make it. I knew nothing. I was in my first year of culinary school. I had no cooking experience. I barely knew how to turn an oven on, but, I had a lot of passion for it, and they just kind of took, a gamble on me because, they had a high turnover rate, and I learned a lot there as far as cooking mass quantities of stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And my very first day, my favorite thing about that place is my very first day, I caught a spatula on fire when I was cooking. I was cooking some eggs, and I had set my spatula down on the edge of the pan to do something, and I turned around and it was on fire. Oh. And I just threw it in the dish pit and walked away. But yeah, from there, I got a job working at a Hilton Garden Inn out here, mm-hmm. based off the recommendation from one of my teachers at culinary school. And same kind of thing. The executive chef, saw my passion and my drive and took a gamble on me. And he, answered every question I had. Cause I had to ask questions about everything. Like, sure. How do you turn this on? How do I cook this? How do I cook that? How do I season this? And he really took me under his wing. And just from there, I started cooking barbecue on the weekends. And I fell in love with it. Just I'm not smart enough to explain to you the science of stuff. I just know why it does it and how to change it. But that's kind of what I fell in love with. And the fire, I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've had a weird obsession with fire. So this is a way to do that, within the laws.
Yeah.
So, I just, like I said, I fell in love with it. And as far as Bodacious goes, I was working, when I was in school, I was working at Starbucks, the hotel, and going to school full time. And Jordan, that used to work here at Bodacious, that used to run it before me, he came up there one day and asked me if I'd be interested in working here. And I said, when do I start? And I think I quit maybe like 2 days after that.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest is kind of history. I've been here now going on 3 years, and I've been running the restaurant for a little over a year, probably going on a year and a half maybe now. And cooking barbecue on the side before that for maybe, a year and a half to 2 years. But I've just literally had the biggest dedication, and I've always strived to be better and to never stop learning.
Talking to Bryan Bingham, pitmaster at Bodacious BBQ Mobberly in Longview. It's interesting to me, Bryan, because you mentioned that you couldn't explain the how it works scientifically, and I think barbecue is very interesting because there's multiple ways to do it. You can do it by feel, and you've done it before, and you can feel when the brisket is ready. You can see when the brisket is ready. And then sometimes it's, hey, I've got a meat thermometer in there and it hits this degree and I know to do this. It's a very rote, sort of scientific method. To me, that's kind of the fascinating aspect of cooking barbecue is you really can have either approach you want or a hybrid of those, and you can still be effective at it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I love so much about, not even just barbecue, but just cooking in general, is the fact that there's not one way to do things, right? So like when people ask me questions about how I do things or how I make something, I always let everyone know, like, look, this is how I do it. That doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's the only way. It just means it's the way that I do it and it works for me. So, if it works for you, that's great. And if it doesn't, then, you can kind of tweak it how it works for you, but that's what's so fascinating about it, is that there are so many different approaches. And, there's always something new to learn, a new technique. And that's what really keeps me interested in it, is I'm constantly evolving, everything that we cook here at the restaurant, I'm constantly tweaking things here and there, whether it be an ingredient, a cook time, a spice, anything like that. I'm constantly messing with things just to make sure that it's as the best that it can be.
I think there's an interesting parallel also to sports with pitmasters, with coaches, in that you ask a coach, a football coach can go out there and win a game 70-0, and they're going to tell you it was not a perfect game, that there were things they need to correct, stuff they need to work on. No coach has ever looked at a game and said, well, this was perfect. I feel like no pitmaster has ever looked at a brisket or a rack of ribs and gone, well, this is just perfect. There's nothing I could have done better. I feel like y'all are all striving for perfection, but always feeling like you somehow come up short, even if it's an amazing rack of ribs or an amazing brisket. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's 100% fair. I mean, my entire life, with everything I've ever done, I've always been my toughest critic. I mean, it doesn't matter what I do, I always will find a flaw in it. Even if 10 people tell me it's the best thing they've ever eaten, well, I'll tell them, look, yeah, maybe it was good, but this was wrong, or I could have done this better. And I think that helps me keep, putting out the highest quality I can. Is I don't even think what I cook is necessarily the best version of what it could be.
Yeah. Well, and you and I are both friends with Steve and Joseph over at Riverport. He's been doing it for decades now. And Steven's the same way. Like even though he's put out an amazing product for years and years and years, and I guarantee you he's put out hundreds, if not thousands of absolutely perfect briskets or ribs, he's never satisfied. And that's, to me, really the fascinating idea, is you're never satisfied by this. Barbecue people are so much different to me, because like you mentioned, when you were at Golden Corral, hey, we need to put out as much of this fried chicken, this fish, this roast beef, whatever. We got to put out as much of this as we can. Yeah, it needs to be decent quality, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Whereas barbecue people are like, hey, I want this one brisket to be the perfect brisket that's ever been cooked. I just find that fascinating, the sort of philosophy of barbecue pitmasters.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, if I put anything out, if it goes up to the front and it's not where I want it to be, I mean, I'll repurpose it if I can. If I'll put it in some sloppy Joe, or if I need to throw stuff away, I will, or donate it, whatever I need to do, But I'm never going to put anything out that's not as high quality as it can be. And to go back on what you were saying about, the way that we think about things and never being happy with it, it's, I think if someone was to look at something, let's just say as a cook, a barbecue or not, I think that if you look at it and you say that I'm the best that I'm ever going to be and I'm better than everyone and I'm the best at what I do, then you have already failed yourself, because you will never be the best. There's always a better way. There's always going to be someone that does it better than you. And the moment that you are complacent, then you might as well just quit, because someone's going to do it better tomorrow.
Speaking of Golden Corral, have you thought about putting a chocolate fountain in it, Bodacious?
No, maybe a beer fountain for me, but not a chocolate fountain.
What about a barbecue sauce fountain?
Yeah, I feel like that might work for some people.
Yeah.
Do a little barbecue sauce fountain, maybe some barbecue fondue.
Yeah, just to drive by. You need to, you want to put a little sauce on the plate. Hey, you just roll by, and it's easier than putting it in a thing with a spoon, right? I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Just or if you want, since you were at Starbucks, do a smoked coffee. Right?
There you go.
Just put the coffee in the grill.
I'm going to steal all of these ideas.
No, please do. Please do. And I wish you would at least put my name on it somewhere.
I'll definitely I'll put it in the little fine print.
Talking to Bryan Bingham, pitmaster over at Bodacious on Mobberly and Longview, and Bryan, you're one of these guys that you do a lot of what is known in the business as craft barbecue. You do a lot of sort of unique recipes. Things you do a lot of different burnt ends. You do a lot of different sausage recipes, a lot of unique things. Whereas, sort of the old school barbecue folks are, hey, I'm doing my brisket, I'm doing my ribs, I'm doing my sausage, the Trinity, and then, maybe some sides here and there. Tell me how you go about getting ideas for that, because I like the fact that you are trying other stuff. You're doing, different burnt ends, different sausages, but how do you come up with some of the ideas for these things? Where do you go to find them?
So where I go is my wife.
Yeah.
She actually works with me now, but, I'll look online too. And sometimes I get just random ideas, but I would say the majority of what I have done and what I do is her. She is the brains between the two of us, and I'm the cook. So that's definitely, I would say, my biggest resource is her. But like I said, I collect cookbooks, and I'm constantly looking at things, and I might see something on TV and I want to recreate it and turn it into a sausage or into a burn end, but she's definitely the biggest resource I have for that as well.
What's the response to that? It's because, again, you're in East Texas, and East Texas is a very unique barbecue market in that there's a lot of people who grew up with a much different style of barbecue than what you might see in Austin. And you're doing stuff that you would see in Austin typically. Do you get an odd reaction at any point? Do people come in and go, well, this is not what I grew up on? Do you get that, or are people open and embracing of the various new concepts that you bring?
It's a little bit of both, I would say. I do get a lot of people who are super excited and want to try the things that we do. Typically, if I have something that's, a little crazy or out there, as far as the recipe goes, I'll do that on the weekends. Fridays and Saturdays is when we get a lot of our travelers who, are the barbecue connoisseurs. But as far as our locals go, they're a mix of both. We get some that come in that think it's really cool and are interested in trying it. Some are confused by it. But I'd say for the most part, more of them are curious and will give it a go. We've had a lot of people who they might have been apprehensive about it at first, but as soon as we kind of explained it, and we're like, just give it a try. Or if it's a burn-in, I'll give them one little piece to try.
Sure.
And every single time I do that, they always buy some.
Yeah. No, look, Bryan, y'all are drug dealers. There is no doubt about it. I've never seen a pitmaster worth his salt, or worth her salt for that matter, that didn't come at it with the drug dealer approach. Right, I'm going to give you your brisket and your ribs that you ordered, but I'm going to put a couple of burn ends over here, or if you didn't order brisket, I might put a slicer here, over here, and you're going to try it, and then you're going to come back for more. The first one's free.
Well, absolutely, man. I mean, it really is kind of that mindset, like what you're talking about. But it's also, for me, I look at it as a salesman. I've been in customer service, outside of working in food my whole life, right? So like I've always had to find ways to get people to try things or to kind of joke around with people to get them to just really kind of open it up. But if you give someone, it's such a small gesture, giving someone a burn end, or if they've never tried turkey or brisket or pork, giving them just a small little piece. Like, I think that right there goes such a long way with people, that you show that connection and that you care enough about them and their experience here, that 9 times out of 10, even if they didn't like it, they might buy a little bit just because they were blown away by that generosity,
Yeah, absolutely. Talking to Bryan Bingham, pitmaster from Bodacious in Longview on Mobberly. All right, a couple of things before we let you go, Bryan. Number one, so if you can, kind of clarify what the Bodacious chain is right now, because we get people here that say, hey, we have a Bodacious in Bossier, and I'm like, well, it's not really the same thing as what you're selling there. Can you kind of clarify what the Bodacious chain kind of is right now?
Yeah, so as far as I know, that one that you're referring to, it's not actually affiliated with us.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the other ones that are here in Texas, Bodacious is a franchise. So where I work is the original location that started it all. And the owners own a couple other locations. But like I said, they're franchises. So they're independently run and operated. So, I answer to her as far as some day-to-day things go.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as what we serve, that's all kind of up to us.
Yeah.
And so, I'm able to choose the cuts of meat that I use and the specials I run and things like that. And so are the other locations.
Tell me about the response to the coronavirus. What have you had to do? I know Greg Abbott opened it back up for 25% capacity. I know a lot of places are not necessarily opening their dining rooms for that. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the decision-making process there, whether you wanted to open your dining room, and kind of how you are going about serving barbecue with the restrictions that you have.
Yeah, so, right now we are to go only. Mm-hmm. So we're doing curbside. You can order online through our website. You can call in orders. You can come inside and order it. You just have to take it to go. And when Governor Abbott said that he was allowing restaurants to operate at 25% capacity, I really thought about it. And number one, with the size of our restaurant, it just didn't make sense. But that, to me, that wasn't even the most important part of why I chose that. For me, it was the safety of not only our customers but our staff.
Yeah.
I've got 2 young kids at home, and to me, the risk was not worth the reward. And everyone so far has been in full support of that. All of our customers, all of our locals, they're all 100% behind us. They have rallied behind us. And, we have noticed a slight dip off in our sales. Like, I'm not going to lie and sit here and say that everything is perfect and that we're, making tons of money, but we're also not struggling like some people are. So I feel blessed in that sense that people are still showing up and they're still buying food, and people are constantly telling us, thank you, and telling us to be safe. And that just, their response is what really solidified that for me, to where I knew that that's the right choice to make,
Final thing, Bryan, you mentioned you get a lot of your out-of-towners on the weekend. I know I often will make a Sunday trip up to Riverport and Jefferson. For those that are in our listening area, and look, we're in a vast listening area. We got 4 states that we cover, 50,000 watts here on the old 1130 The Tiger. Do you have your specials yet for this weekend? Is anything you want to entice us with to come make that weekend trip?
Yeah, so for this weekend, I know tomorrow I'm going to be doing chicken wings. That we're going to be smoking. And as far as the flavors on those go, I think we're probably going to be doing our normal one that we've always done, which is we use our brisket rub and we do an Alabama white sauce.
Yeah.
And then thinking about doing some lemon pepper ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Saturday, we'll have our pork belly burn-ins, which if you're coming for those, it's definitely good to place an online order, because they typically, before I go to bed on Saturday or on Friday night, I have to turn them off because they're typically sold out on pre-orders before we even get through Friday night.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing, I believe, Saturday, if I don't change my mind, which I don't think I am, I'm going to be doing the Big Red on the pork belly for Mother's Day. I've had a lot of requests for those.
Oh, it's like I tell people it's pork belly burn ends, because normally burn ends are off the brisket. But I tell people that pork belly burn ends are basically like candy bacon is what it amounts to. It's just
exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what it's like.
Oh, just ridiculous. Bryan, man, I thank you so much for your time today. I know you're getting ready to and prepping for tomorrow's work. Rogers and I promise are getting over there before too long. We love to make a nice lunch trip over and get some grub. So we're headed your way before you know it. Thank you so much for your time today, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you guys. Holler at me when you come, and I'll make sure to have some good stuff. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate being able to talk with you guys.
Yes, sir. Bryan Bingham, pitmaster, Bodacious BBQ on Mobberly in Longview.